Welcome to Conversational with Carrie Olsen. I'm Carrie. You've heard my voice on HBO Max, Disney Plus, Grammarly, and the MTV Movie and TV Awards, which is funny because I used to be terrified of what people thought of my voice. About me in general, really. I was exhausted from replaying conversations over and over in my head. Did I say something wrong? What did they really think? I was wasting so much mental energy obsessing over what I thought people thought about me. When I got into voiceover, I knew that the more authentic I was behind the microphone, the better I would be at my work. But I was surprised when that started spilling over into everything else. I stopped trying so hard to micromanage other people's experience of me and started learning how to just show up as myself. In this podcast, we talk about how the skills that make you better at voice acting also make you better at life. Let's get conversational. So I was a really annoying runner in junior high. I ran cross country and track, and I would do really well in practice. Like I could hang with the top runners on the team, but when it came to meets, I would basically just jog. And I think a lot of it was just that I didn't know that I could do better. I thought that's where I was supposed to be. I didn't see myself as being like a contributor to the team necessarily. I was like, I'm enjoying practice. Like there's immediate rewards here. You know, we're doing reps and we're growing. I can feel myself stretching. And I just didn't really need the external validation at the meet. I was like, this is just kind of the time when I go, and I don't know, if I was going to be an amazing runner, then I would just be it, right? I guess I'm just not. So one day at a meet, my coach came over to me, and I'm sure she had been like trying to figure out this problem in her brain, like Beautiful Mind style, like why is she able to do this in practice, but she can't run fast at a meet? And so she came up to me and she said, Carrie, at this next race, when the gun goes off, I want you to run and just don't get comfortable. Whatever you feel is your normal pace that you set into, just stay one notch above that, one gear above that, and don't settle in. Don't get comfortable. Just stay a little bit uncomfortable. And I was like, okay. I mean, this was a kind of a novel concept. I hadn't really thought about it. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to run, and instead of settling into my normal pace, I'm just going to go a little bit faster and just push my body a little bit harder and stay a little bit less comfortable, stay out of my comfort zone, which because I'd been practicing so well, my body was totally prepared to do this. It could totally do it. I just mentally hadn't made that decision that was something that I was capable of and that was something I could do, and that I actually did have the stamina and the preparation to be able to stay with some of the top runners on the team. So I did. And the gun went off and I started running. And instead of settling in where I normally was, I remembered I just kept playing over and over and over in my head, don't get comfortable. And so I just stayed right outside my comfort zone. And, you know, again, because I'd been training for it, I was able to sustain that. And I remember coming around this corner and I could hear my coach, and I was shocking myself because I was like, I can see the top runners on my team. Like they're within sight of me. And so I'm coming around and feeling great. You know, my body's like totally into this because, again, I had been practicing like I could do this for a long time. I hear my coach cheering on the top girls. I come around the corner. She sees me, her face lights up. She starts jumping up and down. She's like, go, Carrie, go, go, go. It's so exciting for her to see me with the top runners on the team. And that was like just super fun and energizing for me too. And so that was when I kind of proved to myself that I could be one of the top runners on my team. I could contribute, but it was a matter of bringing all of that practice that I'd been accumulating and bringing it to bear in the meet. Because in my mind, up to that point, those two things had been totally separate. Practice was practice, and the meet or the performance was its own separate thing. But the point is that just that one mindset shift, that one shift of not getting comfortable in the performance, but instead bringing to bear all of that training that I'd accumulated on the actual day that it counted, on the performance day, made all of the difference. If you're just joining, this season is all about implementation. We're documenting it in real time, talking about what it looks like to follow through with the things that you're supposed to do. And today we're diving into something that affects almost everyone who trains or who practices for anything. Why doesn't your performance reflect your practice? Or for me anyway, sometimes it feels like every audition I'm starting from scratch. Like I have all of this work that I've built up, all of this practice and preparation, and somehow it kind of, my mind goes blank when I'm in the booth. And that's okay sometimes. I think especially if I've just come out of a training session then when I get into the booth to record, that's all really fresh in my mind. I'm still in that mindset. But there are some times when I get in the booth and it's like, what do I do again? What's the first thing? Like, look at the script, and it feels like starting from scratch a little bit. So I want to talk a little bit about why that is. And if you have a similar experience where you feel like I've done a ton of training, like I know all the things and I can do it great in a practice. And my coach says I'm amazing. But then when I get in the booth to record an audition, somehow I can't access all of that. It feels like it went away. Or just that maybe I'm not performing in the booth to the same level that I am in practice. So what I've realized for myself is that it feels like they're just two different mental compartments that I have. One of them is for practice and the other is for performance. And kind of like with my cross-country story, I expect to work in my practice sessions. I schedule the time, right? Like if it's a coaching session with a coach, I've paid money for it. I'm showing up at the right time. I'm putting in an hour to an hour and a half, sometimes more, for these sessions, and I'm in it, right? My brain is ready to do work. And then I think there's a different compartment for some reason that my brain has for when I need to go perform, when I have an audition. I'm not coming from the same place mentally. So sometimes the training and the performance feels totally disconnected. So what I've realized is that performance requires the same kind of mental engagement as practice. You can't separate the two. The training doesn't automatically show up in your performance. You have to consciously bring that training to that moment. So I'm going to confess something that I hope no one else can relate to, but it's a reality. It's true. It happens. And I mean, sometimes my auditions are ASAP. So even if I do put in the maximum amount of preparation into that audition, it's still not going to be very much time. So there's just not a whole lot of prep time available anyway. And honestly, even if they're not ASAP, 24 hours is pretty much what they are on average, or less. It's kind of like if you get it at 5 p.m. one day, then it's due at 11 a.m. the next day. So they're pretty quick turnaround anyway. But if I do have a decent amount of lead time for an audition, I have before on occasion waited until right before the audition was due to start working on it. And that's not wise. Shouldn't do that. That's just robbing myself of the opportunity to give the audition focus that it deserves. Instead of, reading deeply into the script and finding all the beautiful moments and taking the time to truly connect with it and relate it back to the company's brand and to see, find all the little nuances and wordplay and contrasts and things like that were so much fun to play with as an actor, I find myself just skimming the script and kind of giving it the good old college try. Is that a thing? And kind of like with my cross-country running example, I end up coasting instead of really applying what I know I can do to that particular audition. So somewhere in my brain, I've compartmentalized practice as the real work. And what's interesting about that is that's a good thing to do. It's good to practice and to prioritize that and make sure that you're getting your reps in. You've got to do that. But the fact that I'm compartmentalizing the practice as the work, it's almost like I've overemphasized the importance of practice so that there's no room for thinking about the audition as being equally as important. But the thing about performance is that you can think about it just as practice, but under observation. And the times when I've done this, I've had really great auditions because I'm not allowing my brain to do that compartmentalization. I'm saying, this is practice. Like, what if, I'm not just in my booth by myself right now, but my coach is on the other end, listening in. That changes the way that I think about my performance. And it helps me to actualize and to access all of that training that I've put in, all of that work that I've put in the past, and bring it into my performance, as opposed to letting my brain do this thing. It's like the practice and the preparation, that's the work. And then when you go in to do your audition, you just kind of let it flow. It should just be there. But when I actively engage that and say, what would my coach say? Let's pretend like my coach is right here with me in this session. It helps me to bring forth all of that prep work that I've done. Again, kind of like in the race where my coach's voice is in my head. Don't get comfortable, don't get comfortable, don't get comfortable. Research by Dr. K. Anders Ericsson shows that this is actually super common, and he calls it the transfer of learning problem, which shows that skills learned in one context don't automatically transfer to another context unless we consciously activate them. So it's not that the training didn't work, it's that I'm not bringing that training into this current present moment, into this performance. I'm treating them as separate activities when they should be continuous. And the time issue reveals this perfectly. So here's the psychology behind why we compartmentalize practice and performance. First of all, practice feels safe. You're allowed to make mistakes. You're allowed to try different things. You're in this free space. I always tell people when I'm coaching them that you come to practice to be bad. The whole point is to come and make mistakes so that your coach can come in and guide you and refine your rough edges. So you don't go into a coaching session wanting to impress your coach or wanting to be amazing. You go in saying, here's all my flaws. This is what I do. Help me to fix this. And be open and vulnerable about what your performance level is. And your coach goes in and says, great, this is what you're doing well. This is what you're not. Let's fix it. So practice feels safe. It should be a safe space anyway. Hopefully your coach has created an environment that feels safe for you to perform honestly and not feel like you have to impress them, or, hopefully they're not making you feel bad for not being where you could be, right? Because that's the whole reason you hired them was, hey, this is where I am and this is where I want to be. So your brains should fully engage in practice because there's no threat. I know that's not always true. I've talked to people who are like, I'm super nervous in practice, but hopefully over time that eases up, as you develop a rapport with your coach and as you start to see yourself improve, that makes it so much more fun to be more vulnerable the next time because then you see the results of it. But performance feels different. Performance is being evaluated. So that puts you in a completely different space than this coaching safe space. Dr. Matthew Lieberman's research shows that when we're being evaluated, our brains can actually trigger this threat response that blocks access to our acquired skills. So we go into protection mode instead of performance mode. Second, there's what psychologists call context-dependent learning. We learn skills in specific contexts, coaching sessions, practice environments, and our brains associate those skills with those contexts. When the context changes, so we're taking it from the safety of a coaching session to the potentially more stressful situation of doing an audition or a performance, we don't actually retrieve what we've learned because the context has changed. And the third reason why our brains like to compartmentalize the training separately from the performance is because subconsciously we believe, or at least I can say that I believe, that once I've done the training, the work should just kind of come automatically. Once I've put in all of this effort for learning these skills, then shouldn't it just kind of come naturally when I get in the booth to record an audition? And to illustrate this, Dr. Roy Baumeister's research on ego depletion shows that our brains want to conserve effort. So if we've already expended the effort in training, then our brains want to coast during performance. But performance isn't automatic. It does require active engagement. So how do we bridge that gap and get all of that amazing practice that we've cultivated, all those skills, to show up in our performance? The good news is once you understand this is happening, you can interrupt the pattern. You can consciously bring your practice mentally to performance moments. You can start to treat your auditions like practice under observation instead of some totally separate magical moment that happens completely isolated from all your practice. So, how do you systematically bridge that gap between practice and performance? Okay, so the first part is time allocation. Thinking about time allocation that actually matches your reality. If practice deserves intentional time, so does performance. And this is non-negotiable. It's simply not going to work out if you're not giving your performance the prep time that it needs. You've got to give yourself space to bring all of that practice and training to the fore. When an audition arrives, treat it like a practice session. You don't show up late to your coaching sessions, so give your auditions that same amount of time and respect. Block out the appropriate amount of time for your auditions to give yourself that prep work. Now, you don't have to start from scratch with every single audition if you're doing multiple in a row, but when you're first starting off, give yourself 30 minutes. to get back into that headspace, to access everything that you had, last worked on in a coaching session. And don't skimp on it. Give yourself the full 30 minutes, even if you feel like you don't need it. At least when you're first starting out trying to bridge that gap between your practice and performance. Don't get comfortable coasting through that allocated time. Make sure you're actively and consciously bringing things to mind that you've studied in your coaching sessions. Start to think of when an audition comes in that it's the same thing as having a coaching session on the books. So the coaching session on the books, and you're going to be in that coaching session, and it's not something you just hand wave away and say, well, it's not due for an hour, so I'll start, later. Start thinking about it right now. Go to the booth. Look through the script. Start your prep work early, because remember that it's just practice under observation. Part 2 is pre-performance activation. Create a ritual that consciously connects you to your training. This is all about habits. This bridges the mental gap between practice mode and performance mode. Before every audition, spend 2 to 3 minutes actively connecting to your training. What did I learn in my last coaching session? What technique applies to this particular script? How would I approach this if this was in a coaching session with my coach? Now, this isn't about overthinking. It's trying to bring to mind consciously all of that lovely study that you've acquired through your hard work. You're telling your brain to bring forward everything we've learned instead of treating this like its own standalone event. I take notes in all of my coaching sessions, and I will bring my notes from some of my first coaching sessions that are just foundational things that I need to remember, but that are so easy to gloss over because you get into a rhythm or you get into a rut, and it's easy to forget a lot of the basic things. And then part 3 is the mindset reset. Just remember that performance is practice. I mean, almost in every sense. It's just practice under observation. Every audition is an opportunity to practice under real conditions. And every session is a chance to apply what you've learned. This is where it's really helpful to be an actor, because you're just going to convince yourself of something. Before you start preparing for an audition, literally say to yourself, this is practice. I'm going to treat this the same way that I treat practice, with the same intentionality and the same fun, the same spirit of fun. This reframe removes that artificial barrier between practice and performance. Your brain stops treating them like separate activities and starts accessing your training automatically. And then part 4 is creating a training integration checklist. Create a simple checklist that ensures that you're actively accessing your training. This can be as simple as, did I identify who I am and who I'm talking to? Do I understand the genre? Do I understand the concept of this spot so I'm not just kind of winging it? The checklist ensures you're bringing that same level of intentionality and respect and purpose to your job or to your auditions as you are to your practice sessions. It's not about being perfect. It's about being consistent. If there's some place in your mind that's saying, yeah, but I don't have time to treat every audition like that, the fact is you don't have time not to treat your auditions like that, because the whole purpose of auditioning is to book work. And if you're not giving yourself every opportunity to book that work, then all of the practice you've done is for naught, and your booking ratio is going to reflect that. So if you feel like you don't have time, it's good to recognize that the time problem is really a priority issue. We prioritize things that we care about. So here's the implementation challenge. For the next week, treat every single performance moment with the same level of intentionality. So that's going to take some planning and some prep work to make sure that you're able to allocate the time needed to do that, with whether it's a practice session, a coaching session, or an actual audition or performance. So your action steps are to start immediately, block at least 30 minutes for the process, use the activation ritual so that you're connecting your training to this present moment of performance, and then apply the checklist. Make sure that you're using your training and not just going through the motions. And then document what happens. Do your auditions feel different? I can guarantee you that they will. Do you feel more confident? Do you find yourself accessing skills that you forgot that you had? And most importantly, notice when your brain wants to differentiate between this practice mode and the performance mode. If you want to share with me your own story about your practice performance disconnect, text VOICE to 55444, or you can go to carrieolsenvo.com/consistent-performance, and you can leave me a voice message there. Don't get comfortable thinking that performance should just happen automatically. It doesn't. It requires the same intentional engagement, just in a different context. Remember, you're not starting from scratch with every audition. You have extensive training and capability. The question is, are you bringing it into the moment or leaving it back in practice mode? Bring your practice to your performance. That's where consistent results live. I'll talk to you next week. Thanks for tuning in to Conversational with Carrie Olsen. If you found value in today's episode, be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell for new episodes. For today's resources and to stay connected, text VOICE to 55444. I'll see you next week.